Nostalgia is weird, and I would even say maybe even dangerous, because when we start to look back on things with these rose colored glasses, as the saying goes, and we appreciate what it was back then, and we forget all the headaches that came along the way, it could be a dangerous place to be in. And I think it would make us take for granted what we have now today when we think of the simpler times, the good old days. And when I think about the past as a whole, leading up to everything, I can appreciate the journey. I like the journey. There's a saying that says the journey is the reward. And to a certain degree, I agree with that, because it's only in the journey do we see the evolution of what was to what is. We can appreciate the growth, the experience, the learning, and overall ourselves in the process. What does that have to do with tech? What has to do with tech is that I was being a little vague on purpose, just mainly to make my point that it's applicable to everything about being careful about nostalgia. You could be nostalgic about many things and forget about the headaches that came with it because we only want to remember the good things. With tech, I don't see that much of a difference. And ultimately, when I think about the iPhone 17 Pro and how far it's come and why I'm excited about this device, is I think about its journey. I think about everything my phone can do today that it couldn't do 5 years ago, let alone 15 years ago, or even more. So here's the deal. I know, and I'm guilty of this too, I like to talk about the era of Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive. Some might say peak Apple. I don't know if that's peak Apple, but I remember the whole journey of all the iPhones. I was 17 when the first iPhone came out. Yeah, some of you guys were babies or weren't even born. I see the analytics. I know who my audience is. And some of you were around for it as well. So when I think about the old phones, it's cool to reminisce about simpler times, because maybe what I'm doing personally is I'm thinking about that time in my life, about how simple it was. And as life goes on, you're like, man, things have gotten more complicated. But that's just life. And I'm not going to put that on the devices of its time. Because when we go back, let's just go back a little bit. iPhone 10, the last like big update where people were like, yes! When you think about the iPhone 10, do you remember how heavy that phone was with the stainless steel? Do you remember the OLED burn-in that was happening? I experienced it. Do you remember the bad battery? The fact that it was 60 hertz, no always on display. And that was, for people who care about that stuff, that was a big deal because it was already on other devices at the time. Do you remember the, oh God, I hope it was more than 64 gigs, but I don't think it was, maybe 64 or 32 gigs of storage. Do you remember how bad the telephoto lens was? Let's actually go back even further at this point now. I'm making my point with that one. Let's go back to the iPhone. Let's go 4. iPhone 4, that was like a big one people were jazzed about. Do you remember Antenna Gate? Now, whether that was hardware or software, that doesn't matter, but Antenna Gate. Do you remember how it was only one speaker for sound that was coming out? It wasn't waterproof. Do you remember how there was no wireless charging? It was Lightning. And even, no, I'm sorry, for the 4, that was a 30-pin connector. Oh my God, remember how when we had Lightning? And nothing was compatible with Lightning. So we had to move away from that with the 15s. To go all the way back to the beginning. Remember how there wasn't an app store? How easily the device scratched for people who care about that? How bad the camera was? There was no video. You couldn't have video on the first camera. I bring all that up to say that maybe for its time it was nice, but you don't see people making those phones their daily. You don't see people using iPhone 10s as their daily driver. And there's a reason for that. At one point, or at some point, I should say, it's not practical. At some point, it is detrimental to your daily driving of what you need to use a phone for. Because let's call it what it is. Now an iPhone, or a smartphone in general, period, is the main computer for so much communication, email, apps for banking, social media, photos, Like everything that we need for the day to day or that we utilize for the day to day, it's our phone. I mean, shoot, my phone is my car key to get into my Tesla. So, no, I don't get too nostalgic about the old days. I appreciate the journey of where we were at then to where we are now. But tech is meant to evolve and sometimes evolve quickly. Tech is meant to be pushed to its limits to take it to the extremes of what our devices can do so it can better suit us in our own day-to-day. Well, some people, this isn't me, but some people have smart home devices and they need their phone to do the automations and stuff like that. I know a lot of people who are heavy into Siri shortcuts, for example. That's not me, but more power to them for that. Ultimately, where we're at now, whether it's a phone, a watch, an iPad, which I'm filming off of right now, my MacBook, everything today is exactly where it needs to be. And I'm going to be happy when these things get improved on in 1 to 3 years from now, and the cycle repeats. It's okay to appreciate your tech for longer than maybe it is marketed. I'm not saying you need to go out and upgrade all the time. If you have an iPhone 16 Pro or a 15 Pro, then no, you're fine right where you're at, for the most part. If you have a lightning cable in 2025, you should probably consider upgrading. I'm not even saying get the Pro, I'm just saying get something that has USB-C. If you have a watch, a smartwatch of any caliber, I'm not even gonna say Apple, and the thing's not getting you through a day, maybe it's time to upgrade. Same thing with any wireless headphones, right? Small batteries, they don't do all that well. It's okay to appreciate the tech for what it is and where we're at, but it's also okay to acknowledge that when there's advancements present, we jump on those opportunities. Especially, and I'm trying to be as vague as to say not just for content creators and stuff like that. I'm saying just for daily conveniences and ease of use, right? We want things to be streamlined and we want them to be almost subconscious in how we interact with these devices. That's when I know it's a good device overall. So if that's you, great. But if you're struggling with any of your devices, and you're like, wow, I really like this. I love the 13 mini. That was my favorite phone, period, full stop. 13 mini. iPhone mini fans, long live us. In 2025, and where we're at, it might not be all that practical. A USB-C mini phone? Maybe, but that's a conversation for another day. Anyway, where I'm at is if you're experiencing those struggles, and it might be because you like what you've been holding on to, try not to live in the past for too much longer.